The Lost Glitches is a digital trading card game where players use glitches, which are creatures, and software, which are action cards, to reduce the opponent's commander health to 0. Every turn, players gain a small amount of energy, and how you spend that energy matters a lot. Because crafting cards costs bits, and legendary cards are extremely expensive, deciding whether a legendary is worth crafting is one of the most important choices a player makes. That's why this series exists. I craft these legendaries so you don't have to. Today, we're looking at the Punk. The Punk is a legendary yellow glitch that costs 1 energy and starts as a 1 power, 1 health creature. It also has the Overflow talent, which means that when it deals more damage than needed to a glitch, the extra damage spills over and hits the opponent's commander. The Punk's effect reads as follows. Whenever another ally is struck by an enemy and survives, the Punk strikes that ally. Then give the Punk +1 power and +2 health. To understand this card, it's important to break that down. When one of your other glitches is attacked by an enemy and does not die, the Punk immediately hits that same ally. Because the Punk has Overflow, any excess damage from that strike goes directly to the opponent's commander. After that strike resolves, the Punk permanently grows bigger, gaining 1 power and 2 health. So the card is designed to reward you for letting your glitches get hit but not die. Every time that happens, the Punk grows larger and can deal direct damage through Overflow without even attacking. When I test the Punk, I don't just throw it into a random yellow pile and hope it works. The entire point of the Punk is that it only triggers when one of your other allies gets struck by an enemy and survives. Then, the Punk strikes that ally, and because it has Overflow, any extra damage spills over and hits the opponent's commander. The Punk then permanently grows by +1 power and +2 health, which means if you can reliably create "my unit survives getting hit" moments, the Punk becomes a scaling damage engine. So the deck is built to do one thing: put down cheap bodies that don't die to normal combat, keep them healthy, and make the opponent's attacks awkward. That's why the support glitches are mostly low cost, high health, and often self-sustaining. Gentle Giant is a 1-cost 0/3 with Protector and Regenerate, which is perfect for this planet's built to survive hits and still be there at end of turn. Then you have Firewall Tank, a 2-cost 0/4 with Regenerate, and it gains +1 power whenever it heals. That's incredible here because every time you heal it back up, you're not just keeping the survived combat body alive, you're also turning it into a threat over time. For the big wall that refuses to die slot, Tankman is another key piece. It's a 3-cost 0/7, and for each damage it receives, it gains +1 power. That means opponents attacking into it are basically feeding you a future attacker, and if it survives, it's also a perfect Punk trigger target. And I'm also running Reckless Renegade, a 2-cost 2/5 that deals 2 damage to itself before it attacks. This one isn't about blocking, it's about controlling your own damaged ally states, so your healing tools and buffs always have something relevant to do, and it keeps combat math weird for your opponent. Now, the deck also runs healing software specifically to keep these bodies alive and repeatedly create those survived being struck situations. The big one is DataStream Oasis, a 2-cost plug-and-play software that fully heals all allies. This is a reset button that turns a messy combat into a clean board, and it sets you up for another round of Punk triggers. And then there's Salute. As a software card, Salute is a 1-cost plug-and-play that fully heals a glitch, cheap, flexible, and perfect for keeping your key survived body alive mid-fight. Now for the commander skills, this is where the Punk deck goes from cute idea to I can actually force this to function. First skill is Salute, 5 SP, fully heal a glitch. You use this when your opponent tries to set up a clean kill through combat damage. If you can keep a key blocker alive through an attack, you threaten Punk triggers and you deny their tempo. In practice, Salute is often used on your highest health body like Tankman or Firewall Tank right after they survive combat, so you're immediately ready to repeat the pattern next turn. Second skill is Hidden Blade, also 5 SP. Give an ally +2 power until end of turn. This does 2 jobs. 1. It helps you trade up when the opponent tries to attack through your walls. Suddenly, your boring blocker becomes a real combat piece. 2. It can push extra damage when the punk is striking allies, and Overflow is spilling damage through +2 power on the right unit, changes lethal math fast. Third is Masochism. I just included these as I want to have fun with Lead Farmer as well. So the basic flow is this. You deploy cheap, high health bodies early, you encourage awkward attacks, and whenever your units survive being struck, the punk starts growing and dealing real commander damage through Overflow. Then you loop healing from Datastream Oasis and Salute to keep the board alive, and you use Hidden Blade or Masochism when you need to pivot from engine setup into closing the game. This build doesn't make the punk a guaranteed tournament staple, but it does answer the biggest criticism of the card: consistency. If you want the punk to work, you have to build the entire deck around making combat survival happen, and this is exactly how you do it. Let's start with the good. The punk is extremely cheap. At 1 energy, it can come down very early in the game, often on turn 1. If it survives, it has the potential to scale very quickly. In decks that can consistently create glitches that survive combat, high health units, shielded units, or glitches with damage reduction, the punk can snowball into a real threat. Overflow is also a real upside. Because the punk strikes your own allies, any excess damage goes straight to the opponent. This means the punk can deal commander damage without ever entering combat, which is unusual and powerful when it works. In slower or board-focused matchups, the punk can punish opponents for attacking at all. Every failed attempt to remove one of your glitches can result in direct damage and a permanently growing legendary. Now, let's talk about the bad. The punk is completely dependent on setup. On its own, it does nothing. It does not grow unless your other glitches are attacked and survive. If the opponent uses software removal, hard removal, or simply kills your glitches cleanly, the punk never triggers. This creates a big problem. Your opponent has full control over whether the punk does anything at all. Skilled opponents will either avoid attacking into survivable glitches or remove the punk immediately. Another issue is that the punk requires you to build your entire deck around it. You need high health glitches, protection effects, or ways to guarantee survival. Without that, it's just a fragile 1/1 legendary. And that brings us to the ugly. In competitive play, the punk is unreliable. Most decks do not rely on attacking into high health glitches. They use software, targeted damage, stagger effects, or clean removal. Against those decks, the punk does nothing. Even worse, because it costs only 1 energy, it looks harmless, which means opponents are happy to remove it early before it ever scales. Overflow does not save it. Overflow only matters if the punk is actually striking with excess damage, and that requires everything else to go right first. The result is a legendary that can feel incredible in perfect conditions, but invisible in real games. That's a dangerous place for a legendary to be, especially one that costs so many bits to craft. So is the punk worth crafting? If you enjoy experimental yellow decks, creature-heavy strategies, and building around unusual combat interactions, the punk can be fun. When it works, it creates memorable moments. But if your goal is ranked consistency, tournament performance, or efficient use of bits, the answer is no. This is not a must-craft legendary. This is not a safe craft. On the lizard scale, the punk gets 2 out of 5 lizards. The concept is clever, the ceiling is real, but the setup is demanding, and the floor is far too low for competitive play. The punk is a reminder that legendary cards aren't about rarity, they're about reliability. And in the lost glitches, cards that only work when everything goes right rarely earn their cost.